Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's broadcast of the Indiana Rock Machine. My name is Sly Rose. I am the host, and today we'll be talking with Jeff Holmes of the Floating Men. So stick around. All right. Well, we have Jeff Holmes here. Thank you so much for joining us, Jeff.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Sly.
Oh, it's a great day to have you here amongst us. And if you don't mind, let's just go ahead and get started. And I'm just going to ask you right now where you are.
I am at my house in East Nashville, Tennessee, with a creepy clown trying to escape out the window over my shoulder.
So hopefully he'll stay there for the remainder of the interview and no problems will be had. So let's go ahead and get started. I was talking to Jeff. Obviously, we are Indiana centric here at the Indiana Rock Machine. And I told Jeff that, hey, you know what? We wanted to make sure that we had somebody like Jeff here who was started from out of state and then came in and had quite a bit of success in the state of Indiana. It played a lot of different places. We're going to go through the different bands that he was in that might have gone through Indiana, the places that they visited while they were here. So, Jeff, can you tell us where you were born?
I was born in Enoree, South Carolina, actually at a nearby hospital. But yeah,
Is that where you grew up?
I grew up mostly on either side of the Enoree River, either in Enoree or in Lawrence County.
So, um, what what do you look back on when you were a youngster that really got you interested in music? You know, some people had the epiphany when they saw the Beatles the first time. Some people when it was the Rolling Stones the first time, or somebody when they saw folk music for the first time. What did you see that said, you know what, I really kind of like to do that? Or, wow, this is awesome. I'm going to think about doing this.
I sang in the crib. Uh, my mom said I sang a lot, and I dragged around dime store plastic ukuleles for about a day until I broke them each time. And so I guess I was born with it. I remember uh, watching on Saturday afternoons Merle Haggard, not Merle Haggard, Porter Wagner, and also the Wilburn brothers had a TV show, and so did Flat and Scruggs. So I was listening to a lot of that. And then my dad was an athletic director at a school, and part of his job was to DJ at the dances on Friday nights, high school dances. And he brought home a couple of Beatles records, and he said, "This is great music. You'll really like it, but don't you ever grow your hair like that."
Rebel already. But did you? How long did it take you to actually grow that hair out? Or did he have you squashed?
Oh no, man! I in high school I had it grown out, but he and I started. He taught himself how to play guitar, and by the time I was 6 or 7, he had was teaching me as well.
Now,
So
was he right-handed? You being left-handed, right? Was he a right-handed player or was he left-handed too?
he was right-handed, and uh, I started out pretty quickly taking classical guitar lessons, and the teacher tried her best to get me to play right-handed, and it just would not work. So we had to go with left-handed, and it's a bit of a curse because you got to pay extra to get those guitars made,
Mhm.
custom left-handed. But we went with it. So
So did you, when you got to a certain point, did you ever try to string them backwards or did you just strictly go, let's go to a store and find a lefty?
mostly it's let's go to the store and find a lefty, but there were plenty of situations in which there wasn't a left-handed guitar available, and I would, if I wanted to play, I would just grab what was available and flip it upside down and play it upside down and backwards. So I learned how to play right-handed guitar left-handed.
So the shape of the C chord would have been obviously upside down too. So you were that's a lot to process up there.
That's the only way I can do it, but it worked out pretty good for me. I'm I'm a mar I'm marginally fluent in right-handed guitar.
So you can do it. So like if you went to some place and they said, "Hey, let's sit down and play a tune," would you sit and would you play it upside down then? I mean, if that's all they had available, if you didn't have your guitar with you?
I've done that. Yeah,
Yep. Yeah,
sure
it's
have.
always interesting to talk to a lefty because it's a whole different ball game. Like 1% of guitar production is left-handed. I think I've read that.
Yeah, and they get you coming and going. You got to pay that extra for a custom-made left-handed, and then when you try to sell it, the dealer will say, "Well, it's left-handed. We can't get any money for it." I said, "But
Right.
you just charged me $1,200 for the one I bought uh, that's left-handed. You can get some money for this."
I think so,
Uh,
right? Supply and demand, you
yeah.
would think. Yeah. So, growing up, you got this guitar, you, found out that you were left-handed, and,
Mhm.
as you progressed, a lot of musicians are, I'm sure, watching. At one point, did you say, "Hey, let's get a band together, or let's do some songs," or did you have a friend that you could play along with, or that sort of thing?
I was about 10 when we started our first band. It was a country band just with kids from around a little small town I lived in. And then started, I guess you'd call it a progressive rock band. I really wanted to be prog rock, you know,
Mhm.
uh, in, uh, in high school. And then I met my partner in the Floating Men, Scott Evans, uh, at the beginning of freshman year in college, 43 years ago.
Whoa.
And we both auditioned for the jazz band at Furman University, where we went to school. And we both unseated incumbent seniors for the chair, and we got to know each other. And within a matter of a few weeks, we had already started what would eventually become the Floating Men.
So it's kismet kind of to run into somebody like that because I know when I was in high school, we could never find a bass player because everybody wanted to play the guitar. So we always had trouble finding a bass player. And did Scott come to your rescue there when you met him the first time? Was he the bass player already at that point, or what was he playing?
Oh, he was already a fine bass player. That was his main instrument, and that he was the bass player for the Furman Jazz Band, which is no easy gig. Uh, and we also did pickup work around town, around Greenville, South Carolina. We would go back up, trumpet soloist. Uh, we would go play in a big band at a debutante ball. We backed up an Elvis impersonator at a place that had metal detectors at the door.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we just picked up work as we could, but mostly we played. We started out playing blues rock, and then uh, uh, started heading more in a punk direction very quickly.
So you guys had met pretty early on then, as you said, quite a while ago. And did you guys ever get, you said you picked up quite a bit with different groups. Did anybody ever say, "Hey, come on in the studio. We need somebody to play this. We need somebody to play that." Or did you guys not get into the studio until it came for time for the Little Saints or the Floating Men?
Oh, we didn't get in the studio in those days. It was all just live gigs. You walk in, they throw sheet music in front of you. You sight read as you go. So
So how long a period were you doing that, going through the different types of bands before you kind of said, "Hey, you know what? I've got an idea for a band, then let's call it the Little Saints."
well, that was what happened in 1979 when we first met. Boy, that's a long time ago. We said let's start this blues band, and we both knew this guy that was a drummer, and I had a buddy who was a fine electric guitar player, better than I was. And so we started that, and for all 4 years of college, did that on weekends. And at the same time, we're picking up work too in college. As soon as we graduated, we moved to Florida and changed our name to Little Saints. We had been freeze warning. Changed our name to Little Saints and quickly had to learn a whole lot of cover tunes and, you know, tamp down the punk edge just a little bit to get any work at all. And heaven forbid we try to play an original song. And we finally said, screw this, in, 86 or so, and just overnight, boom, said we're going to do our own music. And I was still a journeyman songwriter. We were a journeyman band. We were still learning technique and craft. We were great at showmanship, but not real masters of our instruments. And for me personally, not a real master of songwriting. I had to learn. I had I had the artistic all up in me,
Mm-hmm.
but the technique needed more work. So when Little Saints went bankrupt, it was the first time I went broke. In '89, it's like I woke up one morning shortly after that and suddenly knew how to write songs. It's
You'd have to
amazing.
go through some misery, right? You get your misery and you get your 10,000 hours of practice, and all of a sudden it comes to you.
Yep.
So
It
you
just
mentioned Florida. You mentioned Florida a little bit ago, and one of the one of a co-fan of yours, a part of the flotilla, I guess we could call them, um, mentioned that did Scott work at a school in Florida, or was he ever like a teacher or something there, or was that not the case?
his father was. Now Scott is a professor now at Miami University.
Okay, that's it.
He's a hurricane now. But his father was a high school band director, teacher, and also was a professional musician that had a couple of albums in his day with a band called the Four Saints, which is what we got the name for the Floating Men. So if you remember the Four Saints, that was his dad's band.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about when you guys decided to do the Little Saints. Now, you guys had come up with that name. You decided, hey, let's go. Um, where were your first shows as that band?
Any place that would pay us, and some places it wouldn't. Uh, it was a. I'm not sorry about my email coming in. Uh, we had gigged around in college, just around town. We had also played Clemson University and University of South Carolina and Columbia, and I think we've gone up to Raleigh, Durham for NC State a couple of times, maybe. Weekend work in college, but then when we moved to Florida, we started right away in cheesy Florida spring break type joints when Fort Lauderdale was still a thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So Indiana is quite a way. I don't know if you looked at a map lately, but that's quite a drive from Florida to Indiana. How in the world did you make that connection into, say, Bloomington or Indianapolis or some of the other places that we're talking about here?
Our booking agent in Florida also cooperated with a booking agent in Nashville. And that ended up being our full time booking agent. And so anywhere within, an 8 or 10 hour radius of Nashville was fair game. And uh, Indianapolis and Bloomington just happened to go very well, very quickly. Oh my goodness.
So about what year would that have been? Do you remember?
Probably 85 or 86
Okay.
that we first played in Indiana. Yeah.
So, Bloomington, Indianapolis, we have also some tour date stuff that I've gotten from various sources here. We're going to take a look at that. So, kind of bring up the Indiana portion of the interview. But this was you had this is a pretty big deal here. This poster, you mean you had Miller sponsorship? That
Yeah,
point,
we
did you
had
think everything's going great?
it was going good enough. We knew it wasn't going great. I think I always knew that band wasn't really quite there yet. But we were having a good time, and we were putting on some good shows, and there were glimpses of brilliance amid a sea of journeyman mediocrity. Uh, so yeah, and we had with that Miller sponsorship, and we did it for 2 years. We had I had string endorsements, Gibson guitar endorsement. We had sticks, drumsticks, cymbals, drum heads, all sorts of endorsements with uh, big companies. Uh, so I
Well,
would get like a free Les Paul or something.
nice, a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I still
I
have
don't I don't remember you ever playing the electric guitar though very much on stage when I've seen you.
Little Saints. I did all the time.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I did not play electric, and I had a Les Paul. I had Hamer electric 12 string that I'd gotten through Miller, and a smattering of Martins here and there. But my main setup was a Stratocaster through a Mesa Boogie amplifier.
So tell us about these early days, because it's always a struggle, right, to make sure that you have enough money to pay the gas. But we talked about traveling from Florida in that area up to, Bloomington, up to Indianapolis, Chicago, up to those areas. Tell us about what one of those road trips was like, Jeff. When you guys were the Little Saints, what would that be from the day you left to the day you got home? Where would your stops be and how long would that have been?
Oh man, sometimes we were gone for 6 weeks at a time without coming home. And we went everywhere. Uh, what's the big summer festival? Is it Summerfest in Milwaukee?
Yes. Mhm.
We did that. We did the one on the river. I guess it's Riverfront Park in Cincinnati. We did the one in St. Louis. And of course, we played clubs from DC to Florida, west to probably maybe even Kansas City. I don't remember. Went to Austin, uh, but the real heart of our following was in uh, Nashville, Chattanooga, Atlanta, up through Louisville, over to St. Louis, to Bloomington, Indianapolis, and then later with Floating Men, we broke in, of course, Chicago, Milwaukee, Madison, Minneapolis, St. Paul, uh, New York was a big thing for those things. But yeah, the trips would be long, and we would come back penniless. We had $10 a day each to eat off of when we could get that. So even in those days, you couldn't get a decent meal. Free beer was our main source of calories a lot of times.
Barley sandwich.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So making headway into a place like Summerfest in Milwaukee, how did that happen? I mean, was your management company sending somebody that had a set of ears? Were they sending them tapes or just sending them unsolicited mail? Or how did a band from Florida get into Summerfest in Milwaukee?
Just a booking agent.
Okay.
I don't know how they did it. Uh, I do know that they can't really read a map. That's about all I know about booking agents.
300 miles in one night's not a big deal. You take off at 3 a.m., you'll get there in time, right?
Oh, it's been much worse than that. Oh yeah.
So I do remember seeing you guys in the Little Saints, and we have dug up a copy of one of the records here. I think the record. Tell us about recording this. We got a discography a little bit later in the interview, but tell us about recording this, and how it changed, how you saw yourself in the studio the first time as compared to the way you saw yourself in the studio a few other times later. How did you
Uh,
change?
we didn't know what we were doing really. Uh, we had done a couple of demo sessions in studios before and after, but we didn't have a producer. We just went in there with the engineer and produced it ourselves. And we played everything too fast, and it just, you know, it was an amateurish record, but we learned how a studio works and what it'll do and what it won't do.
And what about writing songs? Did you have the songs all fleshed out before you walked in there that day?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. We were ready to go. Everybody knew every note they were going to play,
And you had been
and
playing it
so
live? Have you been playing it live pretty religiously up to
oh
that point, this album's worth of material?
yeah, we had been playing those songs, yeah,
And what year
live.
would this have been? Do you happen to remember? Kind of putting you on the spot here.
I believe it came out in early 1987 or late 1986.
And then
But
I'm
I'm
sorry.
not sure. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Well, there's the apocryphal story of the, second album, that I was told by some friends to ask about. Does it or does it can you confirm or deny the existence of the second album or what state it's in?
I can confirm that it exists. I can confirm that a few people already have it and are sharing it around, and it probably have been for years. Uh, I'm not sure that all of it still exists. It was uh, half of it were new songs in the studio, and the other half were primarily new songs recorded live at the patio, by the way, in
Ah.
Indianapolis. That just happened to be the gig that everything came together for to get the mobile truck up and everything and uh, get some live recordings.
So talking about album number 2, how soon after did album number 2 disappear because the Little Saints ceased to exist? Or what happened at one point where we decided, "Hey, the Little Saints are done and we're going to be moving on to the Floating Men"?
Well, we were so deeply in debt. Everybody, I couldn't even get a credit card, but everybody who did have credit cards had maxed them. We had maxed friends and families, and uh, we just went away. I mean, we had to get day jobs and just to eat, and and we were personally paying on various loans and things.
So I remember, we had at that point become pretty big fans of the Little Saints. And at what point before we moved to the Floating Men did you say, you know what, the first show in any particular town may or may not be attended well. especially if you're not opening for another major draw. Can you talk about like the first few shows you remember in Indiana by any chance? And what those crowds were like, and were you playing as a support act, or were you just going in for a weekend as a headliner, or what was that situation at the very beginning for Little Saints?
The very first time in Indiana, we did the Bluebird and the Vogue Theater back to back. And for whatever reason, I think just good word of mouth and also some excellent promotion by the venues. Uh, guess what? A crowd showed up. That didn't happen very often in new towns unless there was a lot of airplay going in. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, and I remember, because I was involved in, radio and, working at clubs in Bloomington at the time. I remember, we had, at some point become really pretty fond of the Little Saints, and then all of a sudden, Little Saints weren't there, and we didn't know why. And then all of a sudden, and I don't know how you're going to tell me how long this was, how what the period was from the end of the Little Saints to the beginning of the Floating Men. I remember hearing, it's almost, I can almost pull this out of my brain, but I remember us, friends that worked at a specific place in Bloomington. We had become really big fans of your group, and for some way, I don't know how, but we found out that this band coming in called the Floating Men actually used to be the Little Saints. I don't know what happened in advance to get that word to us, or if it was word of mouth from a friend of a friend, or because there was no internet back then, there was no way to get that information. But all of a sudden, I don't know if it was the first show of the Floating Men or the second, but then we realized is like those are. I don't know. Maybe it was an accident. Those guys, that's part of the Little Saints, and they're here as the Floating Men. What kind of how long was it from one band to the other, and how did you get the word out? Or am I just
Oh,
imagining that?
it wasn't too long. I mean, we folded up. Little Saints financially imploded in late '89, mid to late '89, and by summer of '90, the Floating Men were a thing. And here's how you found out about it. We still had the Little Saints mailing list.
Okay.
So we had a few thousand names and a dot matrix printer and nothing but time to sit around and stick those damn labels on those damn postcards.
And it worked. I mean, that's I tell I've got younger friends that I talk to them about how we arranged to go see a band back in the day, where we'd actually have to call each other like the day before or a couple days before and make plans to actually be there at a certain time so we could get in. A lot of that doesn't really happen now, as there are people on their phone and, hey, I'm at the show, come on over, or they're taking pictures, all sort of stuff. So we've now entered the era of the Floating Men. And the Floating Men, I've got my copy right here, of the CD back when physical media was everything.
Mhm.
Um, there was a lot of touring done as the Floating Men. How long did the Floating Men last? What you said, 1990 was at the time? 1990, kind of open ended now, I guess you would say, right?
Yeah, we played our last show in 2010. Uh, Now we went broke
Recurring theme.
again for the second time when we were touring full time after 2.5 years on the road. For every show that you saw that was packed and everybody knew all the words and everything, there were 6 or 8 shows or more when 11 people showed up in, you know, Iowa City or Big Sky, Montana or Portland, Oregon. Uh, so Yeah, we played our last show in 2010, and I walked away in early 2011. Uh, we stopped touring full time in 95 because here again, we had to get day jobs to be able to feed ourselves. We were so far in debt, and we had to keep playing gigs on weekends within driving distance of Nashville to continue to service those debts. But we also enjoyed playing those gigs. And as soon as we were able to say, this is 95 now, this is after the end of the Tall Shadows tour and the Invoking Michelangelo tour, uh, once we were able to say, what's it going to do? Ruin our career? We were able to really cut loose creatively.
Mm.
And so from 95 to 2010, it was off the hook. We could do anything we wanted. We weren't beholden to any big label. We were one of the first bands ever to do crowdsourcing, thanks to the fine folks at Echo Music, Mark Montgomery in particular, for coming up with that. And our fans paid for our albums after that. From that point on, from 95 on. And then we stopped in 2010. I had written and we had recorded a 2.5 hour rock opera in 2009. And we had released it download only. And we got some airplay out of it. We sent hard copies to radio. And in order to write that, I cashed out what little bit of retirement savings I had. So then I went broke for the third time.
Third time's
And
the charm.
yeah, I had very little, but I had enough to get through, and the fans were contributing to the adaptation for the stage. And it just, once I realized that was going to go broke as well, that LLC was doomed. I went to a very dark place, and I didn't listen to music or talk about music, or think about music for a decade. And then in 2021, Skippy, our sound man, production manager, had asked me what to do with all the hours of multi-track live recordings he had. I said, anything you want. So in 2020, late 2021, he got in cahoots with a couple that used to run a fan site for us. And that right about the time I was getting therapy for the PTSD from all the horrible conditions, living conditions we had to deal with, and going broke 3 times. They came out with that record, 2 records, live records, and I listened and I said, I wasn't wrong. We were scary good.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I do want to talk about that performance piece you're talking. What was that? The Sighing Hours, Act 1 and 2? Is that what you're referring to from 2009?
Yes, yes, and we changed titles. I think if you see it,
No
if you happen
clocks,
to
no
see a hard
calendars.
copy, Clocks No Calendars was originally the title, and that's what the first act came out as. And then as we were preparing to go in and record the second act, I changed the title to The Sighing Hours. So now the first album is The Sighing Hours, colon, No Clocks, No Calendars, Act 1. And then the second album became The Sighing Hours, colon, Swimming with Gods, Act 2.
Now, according to my research, it looks like maybe one of them is available, but the other one isn't. So I'm thinking maybe the act 2 is available, but the act 1 isn't. Or I've also heard that you have a bunch of CDs in your living room.
The CDs in my living room went to my uh, sister-in-law's store in South Carolina, and they're doing all the fulfillment on this. This was last month.
Okay.
I dropped them off with my nephew and my sister-in-law, and they sold out of all the physical copies of, and these were radio copies, by the way. So in some cases, Uncle Jeff's naughty words were bleeped out.
Okay.
Uh, in some cases, they weren't because we didn't care. We just marked them explicit language. We didn't think they would get played anyway. Uh, so all of that sold out within about 3 days. What we had left. Once we announced that everything was there, and now I don't have. I have our barrister cabinet back for books now in the front. So
A nice decorating touch there. So I'm going back to this one, like the first album you guys did, Tall
yeah,
Shadows. This was recorded in Indianapolis, right?
it sure was with the late great uh, uh, Gary Schatzline producing and Alan Johnson engineering at TRC Studios up on the Northeast Side.
So
And that picture you just showed, that's the first and only time we used a professional stylist.
you look very stylish there.
Well, we do, but we just don't care for such things. She
There's
was
a
very good, and she also did the cover art, and she was the model on the cover.
there is a third person in this picture in the background. You on the right, Scott on the left, and who is that in the background?
Oh, that's Jeffrey Bishop.
What's up with Jeffrey Bishop?
Let's see. Okay, so how long you got?
That's up to you.
Probably the tastiest drummer I ever worked with. One of the most intellectual peers I've ever sparred with. A dear friend and a great record producer, a great arranger. He had perfect pitch. Uh, he was just the right fit for us. Then he went to, let's see, in 2001, before we released A Magnificent Man, or I even started writing for it. I think I had one song. Uh, he went for a year abroad. He was studying in France, and he was supposed to come back and start as soon as it was over. We were going to go straight into pre-production. We had emailed him electronic versions of the songs overseas, and he'd had a chance to study them. We had everything ready to go. The whole band was lined up. We were going to do this as a full band, not just the three of us, but we were going to have Chris Gotros, David Steele, uh, and Jody Nardone with us, as well as Andrew Moran and Eva Hunter, our background vocalists. So everybody was going to be creating it from the ground up instead of having to slap the electric guitar on something that we did as an acoustic trio. You know,
Right.
that type of thing. So it was a very exciting process. But Bishop called Scott uh, a couple of days before he was supposed to come back, and we were going to go straight into the rehearsal studio, and said, I met a girl at the airport in Paris. We're at a hotel. We're going to be here a couple more days. Uh, so it sounded like an instant magnetic attraction to me.
Mm-hmm.
And couldn't fault him for that. He got back in plenty of time, and we still did the record. And he did the tour. And when I started writing for the next record, he said she was an artist. Is an artist, and she had dual French and Chinese citizenship. She's of Chinese birth.
Hmm.
and they were going to move to China and get married. She was with child, and I thought it was good for him. And we remained friends. Last time I saw him was around 2008. Uh, he came back to the States, and we hung out before one of my shows. I was doing a solo show, and he's still very much in the loop. And in fact, well, not in the loop, but he's actually moved to Thailand now, I think, and he's living there. Not really doing music. He's in some sort of supply chain work, and we might be able to convince him to appear virtually on our new Patreon that's upcoming. So
Yeah, so talk to us about the Patreon thing. So that's a lot of people are going to that, and how is that going to work with you guys, and what kind of content can people look forward to on Patreon?
we have, well, first of all, after being silent, depressed, and suffering from PTSD for a decade, and then breaking out of that, I have a lot to say about our music. I could pick apart every word and every note by every instrument in every song, and tell you why that is great and this is not, or that's brilliant, or I wish I had done this here. There'll be a lot of that.
Mm.
There'll be some racontouring. I don't mind telling a tall tale every now and then. But we also have hundreds of hours of unreleased board tapes, demos, pre-production tapes, rough mixes, interviews. Uh, there's video footage that's never been seen. Uh, and we do have, I guess I can go ahead and say this. We do have a full length live album, fully produced in the can.
So is this material similar to, like, excuse me, like the Ghost of a Thrill Ride, or Remembering Paradise? Like, these are those like old board recordings that have resurfaced now?
They're not board recordings. They were cut to multi-track. They
Oh,
were
okay.
taken in and mixed and mastered, and we have a whole nother album of that. Plus, we have I think Bill Abbott, who was the first fan to ever start a website about us, and who remains a very dear friend to this day, had carte blanche to get him free anytime he wanted to any show, and to take audio directly off the board. So he sent me the list that he had submitted for our Patreon of songs by show in chronological order, and it was 33 pages long, just song
Wow.
titles. So that alone, plus there's many, many more uh, from other people. So that alone is, and I was screening some of it. We're going to issue a night before last. I was screening some of it. We're going to do a deluxe. The first thing we're going to do on Patreon is a deluxe reissue of Tall Shadows, the first album, and this will include both demo sessions and live recordings of each song, and there may even be some pre-Tall Shadows live recordings. So there'll be a lot of stuff that people have never heard in there,
One of the great things.
including.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I was going to say, including the songs, including the title song that didn't make the cut. Uh, the term "Tall Shadows" comes from "Deep Into the Night," which just didn't fit the album.
Mm. Yeah,
Pretty
we've
little
got
folk
some.
song.
I've got a couple pictures here of you guys at the Bluebird. At the Bluebird. Yeah, you can always tell it's a Bluebird because there's a thing that people would hit their head on directly above your head. A
I
reinforcement of
have
the.
I have done the big Pete Townsend jump there and hit my head many times.
So we've got that. We've got you guys there, and I was a bartender at the Peanut Barrel, where your band played a lot there. That was after I had left. I didn't get to work there while you guys were there. But what is fantastic of doing the research on a band that you enjoy, like I enjoy your band, is like I got to sit and watch hours of video. And that's not really prevalent from back in the 80s and 90s to be able to see that information. I mean, there's a lot of video of you three guys playing in the Peanut Barrel, and when you play in the Peanut Barrel, you're not really on stage. You're just on the other side of the room behind like a desk that goes, it's not a desk, but it's a bar, but it's just a bar that's because you have posts down the middle of the bar. You have the bar, actual bar on one side, then you have these posts with tables in between them. Then on the other side of the room, away from the bar, is where you guys would just set up there, and you're standing amongst the people sitting there getting sauced. And I think one of the videos is maybe graduation era of 94 or 95 or something like that, but almost that entire show is on video. And is that the beginning of the using of the snacks material? There's a lot of bootleg snacks. There are different volumes of bootleg snacks, and I actually see the live snacks is on that video. So what where did the snacks come from, and is all this video and all this audio from these things seem like it might have been a concerted effort by you and the fans?
Actually, it was. It takes me a while to write an album, and I'm not going to rush it. Although I rushed invoking Michelangelo a little bit. Uh, I'm not going to rush it. I'm going to wait till it's ready. And so sometimes we realized while I was writing invoking Michelangelo that we were going to need something. It was going to be almost 2 years. We were going to need something out there, keep people interested. Plus, we had all these songs that didn't make the cut on the album, so we recorded an in-between meal snack was what we were calling it,
Aha.
and it became Bootleg Snacks became the title of the series, and we released a total of 6 of them, including a version of what's now Remembering Paradise, slightly different version. And the 7th one is still in the can. I have a hard copy right here, right here, and we'll reissue that eventually. It's an outstanding performance. There are moments when there's one song in particular where Chris Katros, we had all the hottest musicians in Nashville. Katros, David Steele, Indiana boy, played
Mhm.
with Larry Crane.
Yep.
Larry Crane also played on our first album, and David Steele that were recorded at TRC. Chris Katros, South Carolina boy, David Steele, Indiana boy, and a Jersey boy named Jody Nardone on keyboards, and they were absolutely the best combination. If I had a gazillion dollars to hire anybody in the world I wanted to go play my songs, it would be those guys.
So is
It's,
that the so a lot of the videos that we see, I think, excuse me, but some of the later videos that we see are those primarily like recorded in the era of 2003? Because you were doing a lot of anniversary type shows that I've seen videos of. Um, oh, would that have been in that era, 2003, 2004, doing the 10th anniversary of the release?
we
Or
started, we were doing Labor Day weekend. We started in 2000 for our 10th anniversary uh, as a band, and we did them every year until 2010, till our
Okay.
20th anniversary. And that actually was 2010. Actually, was our last show together.
So do you have like a moment where can you tell me we want to talk about your songwriting here in just a little bit, but I like to kind of get the feeling of you guys when you were at your most popular. It, did you have like an aha moment where you said this is the greatest thing that right now this I can't believe this is happening? Or because I like to accentuate the positive, not going, let's not talk about a show where we had two people, but let's talk about a show that you just go, this was absolutely fantastic, or I can't believe we played in front of 20,000 people. Do you have a memory like that?
I have several. I have several. When we rolled into New York City, our first gig wasn't on some side street somewhere in some tiny little pub. Our first gig was the Bottom Line,
Wow.
uh, the legendary Bottom Line, and it was packed. And we rolled in on the power of Vin Scelsa, legendary DJ. He had been there when Springsteen played his 5 night stand at the Bottom Line, and the words were written. Somebody wrote the words. I've seen the future of John Landau.
Mhm.
I've seen the future of rock and roll. His name is Bruce Springsteen. At about that show, that 5 night stand, he had also broken. He was very hesitant about the Ramones, but Vince Scelsa broke the Ramones. Helped break them. He helped break Counting Crows, and he was fairly certain, as were a lot of people in the music industry, we were the next big thing. And that would have been in 1994. No, 95, after Invoking Michelangelo came out.
So you played one show there and then we're out of town, or did you make a couple rounds while you were there? What about the New York experience?
We did a show, and we did live on air. It's like a 4 hour talk show that Skelsa had at the time called Idiot's Delight. So we were the guest on that. And to give you an idea of what tall cotton that is, for a writer anyway, his guest the previous week had been Pat Conroy, the novelist. Uh, so we were in tall cotton. So we went back a month later and did the same thing. Bottom Line, Idiot's Delight. And we also did WFUV uh, with Lita, I think was her name. Rita was the DJ. And then we went back again in November and literally lined up down the hall outside our dressing room were music industry people. And I could see Vin standing back there in line with them, Vince Scelsa. And right beside him was Joey Ramone of the Ramones. And I just waved them on up. And
Yeah,
everybody else had to take their turn,
right.
except this one tall, lanky dude with a suede fringed jacket and a suede fringed hat in his early 70s came in and just pushed past everybody and just flopped down on the sofa. Uh, and he said, I'm the attorney, the international attorney for the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin. I said, please do have a seat.
Can I get you anything to drink?
Yeah. And everybody thought it was going to go straight up from there. And a month later, we were bankrupt and couldn't tour anymore.
I was just going to ask you, what's the turning point? Because we've talked to a few people on the show where they were this close, or they had talked about, that they were going to sign the document, and then the day before they pulled the rug out from under them. Did you have that sort of come here, come hither, come hither, come hither, and then nope, stay away moment?
Uh, we had we were beckoned by a lot of important people. I don't want to name any names because some of them, sadly, are still alive. But every single one of them, to a person, big music industry people, and I might be missing somebody here, but the ones that stood out the most, the biggest ones, were so icky, I would never do business with them.
Mm.
It's just, that's not what we want to do. You start out at a disadvantage when you begin to realize that your biggest goal is not, private jets and glamour and glitz and red carpets and all that stuff. Your biggest goal is to live in a shack in the woods and be respected uh, in the literary world as a lyricist and in the music world as a composer. And uh, those were our values, and they did not match
Mm.
the prevailing music industry values. And nobody knew. I'm sure there were people who knew how to sell it, but they didn't come along before we went bankrupt. We went flat broke.
So talking about writing music, um, where you are now or where you were in 2003, or at any point, how did you progress from that, um, the first album for Little Saints until the last, to what you're writing now? How have you moved along? Has that 10,000 of hours of working at something made you more proficient? You said here in the interview that it takes you a while to write. Did it used to take you longer to write, or is that a common thread from the beginning till now?
Probably a common thread from the beginning to now. I certainly became a lot more serious about it. Of course, I'm not writing. I haven't written in the past 10 years, but as we careen through that last decade, especially, uh, I began to realize that anything was possible. That I could write jazz, I could write country, I could write bluegrass, I could write jazz heavy metal fusion, I could write jazz bluegrass fusion. I could do anything I wanted to. I could be squeaky clean and feel good as a lyricist. I could be dark and disturbing as a lyricist, which was fun.
Mhm.
That was really fun. Uh, but no matter what I did, the band could play it and make it better than even I envisioned it. So it became the point where we were the band that could do literally anything and do it well. And that's not me, that's the musicians around me,
Mhm.
that's the cats. It was just that good a band. Me and Scott, I mean, I was the weakest guitarist in the band for sure. Uh, Scott was the best vocalist. Uh, Bishop was probably the best producer before he moved to China. And then we brought in Steve Eby on drums, and he had great ideas. So everybody had great ideas, no matter what I threw at 'em.
And the
And
the
then,
sound, the live sound when we would go watch you, in different incarnations, your guitar could be sparse at times, or it would be, I can't believe he just played that. I'd be looking for a second guitarist, like when you were doing the three man, and I would go,
yeah,
wow, where did that come from? That was really cool. That little fill or that little thing that you kind of, because you were larger than life, you would miss that little flick of the left hand, hitting the strings in a certain way. So, I mean, you guys got to be working together very, very well. And even if you say you're not the greatest guitar player, I know I'm not the only one who really enjoys watching you. And I think, as we said, the sound of sometimes is of the three individual pieces ends up morphing into something a little bit larger. And it sounds like there's more going on really than three people can make. And that's quite a compliment to your band, having played so many hours together in so many different places, really helps you meld together. Have you ever, getting back to your songwriting, have you ever said, you know what, I am stuck here, I'm going to ask somebody for some help? Or have you ever reached out to anybody else to give you a little kick in the behind, or
N-
not?
No, I've asked for recommendations from the band, from the players of what to listen to when I'm getting ready to write. I'm like, well, what can I listen to that will inspire me? And I want to be astonished. Don't give me anything plain Jane. And I got good recommendations like that. The only time I co-wrote a song, it just happened. Where is that?
I don't know where that is, but it looks like you playing solo, so I wanted to throw that up there while you were there.
Oh, that's at Radio Cafe right here in East Nashville. It's not there anymore. It's a Mexican restaurant now, but that's the old pharmacy, Radio Cafe, and I just would go in there and walk around and play. No PA system, no nothing. Just
Mhm.
just me and my guitar. I like that. But the only time I co-wrote, it just happened, and a friend of mine, his name is Wade Kalinowski, and we met through my other life as a biodiversity conservationist, because he's an outstanding, probably the best southeastern coastal plain ecologist I've ever met. But we were working together on a project, waiting for it to warm up, sitting out on the porch drinking strong coffee. And he had written, I call him a freestyle jazz thoughtist, freestyle jazz thoughtist. Uh, he had written an email to me that where he was ranting and raving about some sort of sprawl somewhere nearby, and he called them post-apoc affluent so-and-sos that were moving in. I love post-apoc affluent.
Yeah, that's a
So
good term.
I brought that up over coffee, and it started rolling, and we did an entire song. We had the words. I wrote it down. I said, I got to get my piece of paper, pen and pad. I never write anything down. I wrote that shit down. Can I say that? I'm sorry. I
I
know
think
it's
so.
embarrassing.
I can bleep it out later. That's okay.
Yeah. And that became that became the first track off Pleasurado. But everything else, yeah, I did it myself. I people asked to co-write with me, and I declined politely just because it's not how I do things.
So let's talk about, we're gonna have to wrap up here. I knew we would go, I knew we'd have a good interview here. We
Oh
had,
wow, we've been on
I
for a
know,
while.
I tell you, with 35, 40 years of questions to ask. But rather lately, the Facebook thing has been going pretty well. And do you know anything about this mailing that went out? I think I obscured the addresses and everything. To the flotilla, the Floating Men fans.
I didn't until it arrived in my mailbox. No, I did not. But I was one of them that got it,
Okay.
and I was like, "Wow, okay, I got to listen to this." And when I did, I was like, "Holy shit, what a man! What a band!" Uh,
And I love the attention to detail on this mailing too, because I mean, it's got the old stickers. I My old Floating Man T-shirt was washed and dried too many times; it doesn't even begin to fit anymore. But Mr. Floaty, or what was your term for him?
Mr. Floaty is fine. Yeah,
Mr.
just
Floaty. Yeah,
yeah.
he was a really good recurring um, uh, uh, icon of these giveaways, or these shirts and the stuff, the materials that would go out. And you know, I've seen all these stickers at some point in different forms over the years, and it was like, wow, somebody really went to a lot of trouble to do this. And I didn't know if they had talked to you in advance, but now we know that they hadn't. It was just a gift that arrived on your doorstep too.
It was, and like I said, I told their old production manager, I said, "Man, if you got multi tracks, mix them, make an album. That's fine with me. Whatever you want to do." I'm not going to lift a finger, but y'all
Yeah.
go ahead.
So is that what is that the media here? Is that what this media is? I see thrill ride. I don't really have a lot of resolution here. But what are these that were sent along?
Yeah, that's Ghost of a Thrill Ride, Remembering Paradise, which is a remastered and I think it's got bonus tracks version of Bootleg 6, which was only released to like the first fewer than 500 people. I think it was less than 500. Uh, and everything went straight to digital after that. So that was an acoustic show that we recorded mainly to workshop shows or songs for The Haunting. So that was recorded in 2004 in a tiny theater with people literally sitting in our laps, and with all the recording equipment and all seven band members, including Andrew who sang. We could only have 50 people in, and the seating had to be just so. Yeah, there's the final lineup there. Uh,
What year was this? This was 2004. You said three.
uh, the Remembering Paradise was 2004. That particular photo was taken in 2007 for
Okay.
Pleasurado. Yeah.
And who are these people here? Can you tell? Can We're testing
Yeah,
your
sure.
memory here?
Yeah, left to right. Steve Eby on drums, Chris Katros, uh, the mad scientists on guitar. Of course, me in the middle. My right hand man, Scott Evans, or I'm his right hand man. It doesn't matter. Bass, background vocals, string arrangements sometimes, vocal arrangements. More of a producer than I am. Then let's see. This leaning over. Andrew Moran is a contemporary Christians singer, writer, or was at that time. I haven't checked to see what she's doing these days. No, she's got a kid that's adorable. And Jody Nardone back in the back peeping over. That's our Jersey piano cat. His David Steele is not pictured in this because he was not available.
Okay. And is
Yeah.
this the same group here?
Same group, except the drummer is was our bullpen drummer. That's Rich Keys behind the drums, and Rich always made it a lot of fun too. He was fit right in, and it was always fun when we never missed a beat when Steve had to miss a gig because he would just plug right in and go with it.
So I think this is probably one of the last group photos, or is this from the same era?
This from the same era, and that is indeed everybody. That is the promo photo for The Haunting 2004. Scott on the left, then me as the demonic preacher, then Steve Eby. Let's see, let's give Eby some creds here. He was with the Dixie Chicks, and also did Little Feat for a while, and he plays with everybody in town basically. If you want a rock drummer, you get Steve Eby in the state of Tennessee. Next, over in the white T-shirt is David Steele. Uh, like I said, he was with Larry. He played lead guitar for Larry Crane, who played lead guitar for Mellencamp. So
Mhm.
that was weird. Uh, and Steele has done John Prine, Lucinda Williams, Steve Earle, uh, uh, and ask him someday about jamming with Levon Helm and standing up Winona Ryder for a date. All right. Chris Katros, his main gig has been Terry Clark, the Canadian country singer, but he's played with lots of big names too. His coolest gig, I think it's cool. He thought it was ridiculous and hated it, but he wanted to do it to say he did it. Was Engelbert Humperdinck. He did
Wow.
it. one tour with Engelbert Humperdinck.
How
Okay,
about that?
but yeah, but he's great. Jody Nardone, I guess he's most well known. He's got the Jody Nardone Jazz Trio, of course, but he's probably most well known for playing with the King Crimson Jazz Trio with the original drummer Ian from King Crimson, a very critically acclaimed jazz trio, and he was the keyboardist for that. And Andrew sings with everybody, and she's one of what she used to call herself. She's one of Nashville's premier. What you call herself? First take cutie pies.
Great name. Great name.
She doesn't need a second take. She's going to nail it every time.
So yeah, there's a lot of recordings. I encourage everybody to go online because it's a treasure trove of material there. Obviously not so much with Little Saints because it's earlier in the times, but there is a lot of video of this group together. There's a lot of video of you, the three members, playing as the Floating Men, especially in my old bar, the Peanut Barrel, which I was flabbergasted by, and I enjoyed every minute of that recording that you guys did there. Um, how often are you on the Facebook page? I every once in a while I'll see you post something there. Um, how do you see yourself interacting with the fans there, and what do you try to do there?
I've considered myself a fan too now, 10 years removed from it. I came back to it with fresh ears, so it's like I'm discovering something new. So I just consider myself one of them that happens to know a lot of things they don't know about what was going on. So when the mood hits me, I'll uh, I'll tell them, okay, remember this? Guess what caused that, or something like that. Guess what inspired that moment? And I'll be doing a lot more of that on the Patreon. At any time, I could blurt out anything at any moment about anything
Well,
having to
when
do
this
with the
gets
floating men
posted,
on
when we post this on the Facebook, not Facebook, I think we'll probably put this on our YouTube channel. But when we get to that point, we can make sure that we link that in the discussion down below, so people can visit that Patreon page. And I'm sure we'll get a lot of Flotilla members here that are going to watch and that sort of stuff. Um, there is, we talked about. We're going to wrap it up here in just a minute, I promise. But the Patreon is kind of like a new way of merchandising. So how can you tell us what it was like those first trips, either with the Floating Men or the first trips with the Little Saints, what your merchandising was like then compared to what it is right now?
Oh, right now we everything is auction only. I mean, you can get stuff on eBay and pay a fortune for it. The only thing that's cheap out there is invoking Michelangelo CDs because we way overpress them. Uh, Merchandise, the best merchandising experience we ever had with the Floating Men or any band was bar none the Bethlehem Music Festival in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I remember we did the show with Trout Fishing in America from Little Rock, Arkansas. And we had the big stage, and they went on first, and then we went on and absolutely destroyed that place. It was outdoors, maybe 2,000 people, and we had to have merchandise FedEx to us uh, to replace. We sold out of everything. This was on the Invoking Michelangelo tour, and we were getting airplay in nearby New York, so we were kind of already known, and that was so much fun. I seldom did merchandise when it was just the three of us. Of course, later on we had a merchandise person, but I seldom did it because I needed to drink water and rest because of the singing. I had to drink a lot of water. And I had to get out there, and we were slinging CDs and T-shirts every which way. Best merchandise night ever. Thousands of dollars in merchandise. That almost got us out of debt for that week.
I was just going to say you got to eat on that trip.
We did get to have a little something nice to eat. Yeah.
And you didn't have to stay in the squalor that sometimes you were forced to stay in.
Nope, not all crammed in one room at a Motel 6.
Well, Jeff, I want to thank you so much. But before I let you go, is I just want to know about the Amphibian and Reptile Conservancy. Can you tell us a little bit about that, or what you were up to exactly these days?
Yeah. Right after I had my little breakdown in 2011, the third time I went broke, I had been working in conservation off and on. That had been my day job. I said we all had to get day jobs, and that would have been mine. And really had a strong passion for it, and had risen to a leadership position in some organizations. And I got approached uh, to come join the staff at the Amphibian and Reptile Conservancy, which didn't pay, which I was used to, but it's something I care very deeply about. So I'm going to do, just like with the music, I'm going to do something I feel very deeply about. I'm going to conserve wild animals and wild habitats. And I worked as executive director for almost a decade. And now I'm founding director, which is dialed back just a little bit. And I don't have to deal with the day-to-day admin, which is the main thing I don't like about it.
Mhm.
So I'm just a rabble rouser and a field guy now, and an extra brain, an extra set of eyes, an extra set of ears. And it's a very successful organization. We started with some bubble gum and baling twine, and now we've got professionally produced videos and things like that to help get the message out. And we are stretched from the Carolinas to we've been to California. We're about to go into New Mexico. We're just nationwide.
That's fantastic. So if people want to score some of your material besides Patreon, can they still visit floatingmen.com? And is that still a going enterprise?
It's still a going enterprise. We think the Patreon will take over for that. And plus, all our music is now, we're pushing it out onto all of the major digital platforms, Apple Music and all the Spotify, all that stuff.
Right. I've listened on Spotify, so I know it's there. So that's good. So people can get a hold of that stuff. They can see that. I really strongly suggest if you're on Facebook now, a little bit not on Facebook, but on YouTube. I'll put some links of maybe some stuff to watch while they're on YouTube. Just especially that Peanut Barrel. I'm gonna go and say let's put the link to the Peanut Barrel show there because I think that's just vintage. It's dark. It's 90s. It's really noir almost of you guys playing at night at the Peanut Barrel, and just a great experience. And one thing, Jeff, is this has been a great experience. I want to thank you so much for appearing. It's been a fantastic time speaking with you. I've always wanted to speak with you, but you guys are always busy, obviously, when you were playing. And by the end of the night, I had been overserved, I'm sure. So it's probably better that we hadn't spoken till now.
I well, I really enjoyed this, and this is the first public thing I've done since probably 2009, in terms of media. So I've been looking forward to this so much, and thank you for all you do, and thanks for having me.
All right. This wraps up our interview with Jeff Holmes. Thank you, Jeff. And we will see everybody next time right here at the Indiana Rock Machine. Thanks again.